Kritabhisheka Kritamitra Mangalo. Vashisham Abhyavadayat. Maitreya Ravacha. The great sage Maitreya said, Nishamya, after hearing, Vaikunta, of the Lord, Niyojya, associates, Mukyayo, of the chief, Madhuchutam, like pouring honey, Vacham, speeches, Urukrama Priya, Dhruva Maharaj, who was very dear to the Lord, Krita Abhisheka, took his sacred bath, Krita, performed, Nitya Mangala, his daily spiritual duties, Munin, to the sages, Pranamya, having offered obeisances, Ashisham, blessings, Abhyavadayat, accepted. Translation. The great sage Maitreya continued, Maharaj Dhruva was very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When he heard the sweet speeches of the Lord's chief associates in the Vaikuntha planet, he immediately took his sacred bath, dressed himself with suitable ornaments, and performed his daily spiritual duties. Thereafter, he offered his respectful obeisances to the great sages present there and accepted their blessings. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. We should mark how dutiful Dhruva Maharaj was in his devotional service, even at the time he left this material world. He was constantly alert in the performance of devotional duties. Every devotee should take his bath early in the morning and decorate his body with tilak. In Kali Yuga, one can hardly acquire gold or jeweled ornaments, but the 12 tilak marks on the body are sufficient as auspicious decorations to purify the body. Since Dhruva Maharaj was living at that time at Bhadrak Ashram, there were other great sages there. He did not become puffed up because the airplane sent by Lord Vishnu was waiting for him. As a humble Vaishnav, he accepted blessings from all the sages before riding on the plane brought by the chief of the Vaikuntha associates. Maitreya Ruvacha, Nishamya Vaikuntha Niyoja Mukyayo, Madhuchutam Vacham Arukrama Priya, Kritabhisheka Krita Nitya Mangalo, Munin Pranam Yashisham Abhyavadayat. The great sage Maitreya continued, Maharaj Dhruva was very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When he heard the sweet speeches of the Lord's chief associates in the Vaikuntha planet, he immediately took his sacred bath, dressed himself with suitable ornaments, and performed his daily spiritual duties. Thereafter, he offered his respectful obeisances to the great sages present there and accepted their blessings. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachayane Nirvishesha Shunyavadipasya Deshatarne, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha, Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So, devotees, the first point at least, that Srila Prabhupada focuses on in the purport was how Dhruva Maharaj, when this Vaikuntha airplane, or actually it was a group of Vaikuntha airplanes came to take him to Vaikuntha, he did not, what would you say, sort of, not panic, but he didn't just get so enthusiastic, he just ran and jumped on the Vaikuntha airplane, because I'm going to Vaikuntha. No, he took his time to do things properly, in respectful and nice ways. And before getting on the Vaikuntha airplanes, he performed his regular duties. You know, sometimes when there's a sort of difficult situation, people are trying to get out of it, and some possibility is there, some vehicle comes that you could escape in, something like that. People may just race to get on and push each other out of the way and that sort of thing. But in this case, of course, specifically, and there are other instances too, where devotees in dangerous situations, actually, this is not a dangerous situation, but in dangerous situations, or like here, this is just a most amazing thing that some Vaikuntha airplanes have come with Vaikuntha Vasis, leading devotees from Vaikuntha to take Dhruva Maharaj back to Vaikuntha. It's the sort of situation that you might possibly expect someone would react like this great urgency to get on the airplane and get away as soon as possible. But not with Dhruva Maharaj. And I mentioned at least another case. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Another case where there was great danger, but the devotee who was in danger didn't react like, oh, I'm in danger. It's an emergency. Save me, do something. It was with Uttara. It's in the first canto, I think ninth chapter, where Ashvatthama has released a Brahmastra weapon to kill Maharaj Parikshit, who is in the womb of Uttara. And Uttara happens to be there with the Pandavas and with Lord Krishna himself is there. And they all become aware that this Brahmastra weapon, very extremely dangerous weapon, that it's coming this way right now. And they understood, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Yeah, somehow they understood what the mission of the Brahmastra was, to kill Parikshit in the womb of Uttara without harming Uttara. So Uttara became aware, and of course she wanted to save the embryo within her womb, Maharaj Parikshit. So she appealed to Lord Krishna, please intervene and somehow or other destroy this Brahmastra, save me and save my child. And Prabhupada points it out there where this whole thing is going on, that she doesn't turn to Lord Krishna and just say, save me, do something. But first of all, she offers prayers. My dear Lord Krishna, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you are very great, and you are very wonderful in different ways. And then, could you please save us from this Brahmastra? Prabhupada points this out. It's very nice how even in dangerous situations, the devotees are very concerned and considerate about the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And here, Dhruva Maharaj in principle is in the same sort of state of mind, that this group of Vaikuntha airplanes have come to take him to Vaikuntha. There's a group of them, and there's a number of associates of the Lord, Vaikuntha Nath, who have been sent by him, and who have come from there specifically to take him. So what does Dhruva Maharaj do? Well, first thing he does is take a bath. And then, having taken a bath, he dresses himself, and then there's the question of ornaments, because particularly for royalty, these really big, important, and incredibly wealthy people, generally they would only appear suitably attired and with appropriate jewelry and things like this. So he did that. He dressed himself with suitable ornaments, Maitreya says. Then he performed his daily spiritual duties. We don't know exactly what those were specifically, but he definitely had some sort of program. Maybe he was chanting 16 rounds or something, chanting some rounds. Surely he was chanting some mantras, and maybe he was doing some deity worship, or he was doing certain transcendental Krishna conscious activities as a general rule. So he did them. He felt that out of respect for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I must do these things. It's only right. Let me not just be sort of, what would you say, familiarity breeds contempt. I don't know if that's the right idea here, but let me not just be negligent and just take the opportunity and just jump on and go for it, but let me do everything very nicely. I was actually just reading yesterday, I'm also in the 4th canto, I'm in chapter 22, preparing Bhakti Vaibhava. And yesterday, there's a very nice situation that I read about, really. I mean, the whole thing is just full of all these amazing situations and Srila Prabhupada's amazing comments to help us to really enter into the situations. But what happened was, Dhruva Maharaj is there, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead has just been instructing him. And now the Supreme Lord has just gone, but who should arrive but the 4 Kumars? So Dhruva Maharaj receives the 4 Kumars very nicely. They're senior, even though they look like little boys, but actually they're from the first generation they're amongst the very first of the first generation of inhabitants of this universe. So they now instruct him, and what happens is, one of them, well, first of all, Sanaka Kumar, and then Sanat Kumar, they give instructions. Not a lot, at least as they appear in the Bhagavatam, but they give some instructions. And Dhruva Maharaj, he asks some questions. Excuse me. He asked some questions, and he asked these couple of questions, and they're kind of, you would say, basic type questions. How does the living entity get out of Maya? You know, that type of thing, and even specifically that, and that type of question. And Prabhupada makes the point that actually Dhruva Maharaj knows this, and in fact, basically he knows it as well as the 4 Kumars know it, but they are senior to him. So therefore, just out of deference to their seniority, he puts before them simple types of questions. And they accept that. They don't say, well, why are you asking this? You already know about that. Dhruva Maharaj is on the level that, you know, if somehow or other it came to it, he could possibly, at least he's got the qualification in terms of knowledge, he could instruct them. But he is accepting his junior position, and so he's inquiring in a general sense, how do you become Krishna conscious, and what do you do, what do you not do, that sort of thing. And Prabhupada makes the point that this is the proper way to do it. This is the proper way to do it. And certainly not to show off that actually I know quite a bit. Maybe I even know more than you. Not at all like that. A similar situation is there, which Prabhupada also comments on, is in Srimad Bhagavatam. We have Shukadev Goswami instructing Maharaj Parikshit. And Prabhupada makes the point that Maharaj Parikshit, of course, he's in the particular situation where some instruction would be most appropriate, generally, for most people. But actually, Maharaj Parikshit, he's a great pure devotee, and he is no less advanced than Shukadev Goswami. But the situation is such, the circumstances, he's in danger. And Shukadev Goswami, great devotee, has just appeared on the situation. And Prabhupada makes the point that if the table was turned and Shukadev was in danger and in a situation where generally a person should be instructed how to deal with a difficult situation, then actually Maharaj Parikshit could have instructed Shukadev Goswami. He had the knowledge, he had the spiritual insight, and just the consciousness how to present, what to present, like that, to help the person in the particular situation, because it's all very personal. But because of the circumstances, Shukadev instructed, Parikshit listened and asked questions. So here it's like that also. Dhruva Maharaj is junior. And when you're junior, don't start showing off how you've just read so much and you know so much, all that sort of thing. But take the position of the junior and really inquire sincerely from the heart, and even inquire in broad ways and ways which will help the people in general. So that's there. So in this particular case, though, he performs his devotional duties like his duties in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. You could say like that. Now, we all know that there's Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, the practice of devotional service according to rules, regulations, do's, do-nots, this sort of thing. We all know about that. I mean, at least that it's there. And we also know that there is another type of sadhana bhakti, sadhana meaning practice, not perfect bhakti, but the practice stage of trying to progress in bhakti, and that's Raganuga sadhana bhakti. So here, Dhruva Maharaj, he just in general, there's not exactly a description of him being engaged in Raganuga sadhana bhakti as such. Rather, generally, he's more presented as being like a Vaidhi type of sadhaka. But here he really makes a point of doing his duties, what he's meant to do, according to the rules and regulations, to prepare himself for what is surely going to be a great adventure. You know, the first thing that's going to happen to him is his body is going to be transformed into a spiritual body, as I recall, at least. His material body is going to be transformed. I don't know what that feels good. Extremely good. But he's going to change his body. Sure. First, that's step number one. And then off on this airplane, through the universe, through the covering, well, not actually, but up to Dhruvaloka. chanting his rounds or equivalent activities that he would do, or maybe he did chant rounds. He took that very seriously, even though he is, what to speak of being on the perfectional service, he is a Shaktivesh avatar of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Or, as Bhakti Vikash Swami says, that he heard Srila Prabhupada say, Prabhupada was asked by a devotee, is there any sort of a good reason someone could have for not coming to Mangal Arati? And according to him, Srila Prabhupada said, yes, death. Yeah. So if you're not dead, you should come to Mangal Arati. Yeah. Or at least get up and do your program or something. But yeah, we should not be too quick to think that Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is not really so relevant to me, like in the sense of, taking trouble to maintain the standards of it. Of course, Krishna consciousness is very blissful and wonderful, and there's so many nice things where devotees become very excited and ecstatic, like kirtan, like nice kirtan. And devotees may sort of get out of a mood of formality and start, just sort of being informal, just expressing their feelings. So that's nice. Of course, one has to be a little careful. I remember, actually I wasn't present, but it had just happened some few months before I joined the temple in London. Prabhupada had been visiting London and staying in the Berry Place temple. And he was there in the temple room when one kirtan was going on. And one devotee, his name was Charanaravindam, he used to dance in very flamboyant ways and, lift his feet up. Yeah, so his feet became very prominent in the kirtan, and everyone saw that he's sort of waving his feet at them or something like that. And Prabhupada chastised him for that. That don't just display your feet like that. It's not proper in kirtan. So we should be mindful and not too quick to think that we have advanced to the point where these types of things like chanting our rounds, reading the books, and maintaining the principles, that these things, I don't need to worry about them so much, or, like that. I can just do as I feel like doing in Krishna consciousness. The problem with doing what you feel like doing is that until you come to the level of actual pure devotional service, what you feel like doing, where your feelings are coming from, it may not be pure Krishna consciousness. It may be just something material. It may be something material. Yes. Hare Krishna. So, anyway. So then, instead of it, like the Sahajias, the classic examples are the Sahajias, they even make a point of not really developing knowledge. So they don't know rules of etiquette. And so the Sahajias, it's quite a famous type of program some of them have, is a man and a woman. Man says, I'll be Krishna, you be Radharani, and let's get together in all of the most materialistic ways, but they think that, it's very Krishna conscious because we're doing what we feel like. But that's the problem. That's one of the problems of being in such a condition that what you feel like doing sometimes may not be correct, may even be offensive. Jayananda Prabhu, in one of Prabhupada's very first visits to San Francisco, devotees came to the airport to greet Srila Prabhupada, and Jayananda Prabhu got very excited. And when Prabhupada came through and sort of joined the devotees, Jayananda rushed forward, embraced Prabhupada, picked him up off the ground, because Jayananda was big and Prabhupada was small, and spun around 360 degrees, embracing Prabhupada, and put Prabhupada down. And Prabhupada said, one should not do like this with the spiritual master. With other devotees, it may be fine under certain circumstances, but not with the spiritual master. So yes, Dhruva Maharaj, we should mark how dutiful he was. He went through all the things, the early morning activities, taking his bath, and then dressing nicely, then putting on tilak. And of course, it's an interesting point, just by the way, that we also may not have jewels, or not many, or maybe some from plastic ones from Shanghai, I don't know. But I remember Giriraj Maharaj chastising me for having a gold, it was like 18 karat, I think, one of these little things, what do you call it? Is it a kavacha? That they put dust in. Oh yes, there we go. Oh Krishna, let us wait. And I think it was a 9-carat gold chain. Giriraj Maharaj told me that this is not suitable, so I took it off. I think I gave it away to someone. Yeah. So yes, either you may not have jewelry or much, like Dhruva Maharaj's royalty, but even if you do, tilak is a very wonderful decoration. If you don't have any gold or, rings and necklaces and that sort of thing, but you just have nice tilak, you are nicely decorated. Yeah, very nicely decorated. And not just decorated, but it's very auspicious. So he did like that. So then another point that Prabhupada talks about in the purport, Dhruva, of course, at this point, he's left home and he is in Bhadrakashram, right up there in the Himalayas. It's really, It's really way out there, really way out there. More than 3,000 meters above sea level. So he was there, and it's a traditional sacred place since time immemorial, and so therefore there's many devotees there. There's many devotees there. And many of them, they're great sages. They're not just your sort of, if you can say, ordinary devotees, if there is such a thing, but they're actually very great devotees and sages. And now here is Dhruva. These airships have come for him, and he's going to get on. Yeah, he's going to get on because they've come for him. But he doesn't, Prabhupada say, he doesn't become puffed up because they came for me and they didn't come for you. That sort of thing. Not at all. He just understood it's the mercy of the Lord, and he accepted it like that. And not only did he accept it like that, but he offered obeisances to those sages and devotees who were there and received blessings from them. I just glanced this morning at Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport to this verse, and he says that Dhruva actually asked them, please bless me, please bless me. He requested blessings from them. He didn't just accept them, but he requested. And another interesting point, at least I thought so, which isn't mentioned here, that here's Dhruva Maharaj, he's going to Vaikuntha, and that's where all the great sages generally would like to go, but they're not all running forward and saying, can I come too? They're there, and they're offering their respects like that. And that's an interesting point because in a certain sense, it doesn't really make a big difference whether you're in Bhadrik Ashram on this planet or you're actually on a Vaikuntha planet. In a certain sense, in principle, the devotees are not really so concerned about what you might call geographical considerations. I mean, a holy place here or somewhere in the spiritual world. Because as Advaita Acharya told Lord Chaitanya Lord Chaitanya, anyway, it's a long story, I won't get into it, but he said he thought he was in Vrindavan, these places. So, anyway, Lord Chaitanya, he thinks he's in Vrindavan, but now he sees Advaita Acharya, and he really doesn't expect to see him in Vrindavan. So he asks him, what are you doing in Vrindavan? And Advaita Acharya explains the situation that we're not in Vrindavan, but we're in Navadvip. But Advaita Acharya says, actually, wherever you are, that's I remember when there was nothing. There was just a sort of a hillock or something, a small hill here. But now look, it's Vrindavan. Radha Radhanath are here. It's actually Vrindavan. So it's interesting that Dhruva Maharaj, he's in the process now of getting on an airplane, going to go to Vaikuntha. The sages are all there. Quite likely, so many of them are actually pure devotees, and they have the greatest qualification one could have in Krishna consciousness, but they're just staying there in Bhadrik Ashram. So like this, Prabhupada brings these points out here, and particularly, we should not take Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti lightly as like, it's not important, it's just for beginners, or something like that, or that it doesn't really apply to me because I've been a devotee for X number of years. We should always try and do these things really nicely. Nicely put on tilak, get up early, have a nice bath, be nicely dressed, etc. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sweta Dweep Prabhu, any words of wisdom?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I just thank you very much. But we missed your classes because you're not well. I came and thought I'll be getting class. But anyway, today I'm going back, so thank you very much. And you will see on the social media also. We like to listen to you every day and relish every word coming out of your response. You are very fortunate and very blessed. You are hearing the happening.
Hare Krishna. Not a good comment. Yes, Prabhu.
Just two things. One, during the class I was struggling to try to remember whether this was in the beginning or as Dhruva Maharaj was practicing. Because I just wanted to know if Dhruva continued, if I'm remembering this well, Naraka came and gave the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya mantra to Dhruva.
Yes.
So I think somewhere in the class I was trying to remember if this was the sadhana that he was practicing every day as Maharaj was speaking.
Like now?
Yeah, not even at this stage. Was he still continuing with that mantra as he was given to
Okay.
time he was practicing?
Okay, let me just address that first. Is that okay? It doesn't say, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was one of the things he did. I mean, even at this point where he's an adult, he's kind of, I guess, middle-aged or something like that. Yeah, because what an impact that had on him. Such a massive impact. But it would seem, or be likely at least, he'd have other duties because he was just a child at that time. And, when they grow up, these devotees in the traditional families, then they're initiated and they're given sadhana to do, which, as they're growing up. So I would assume he had other things that he would do.
The second thing was what Matt said about the Munis, or the saints were there who although Dhruva was to be taken to Vaikuntha, they did not even want to negotiate, they should also go. But then it reminded me of the blessings of a Brahmana to this king's son, the butcher's son, the devotee, and the Brahmana's son. But also, I'm just thinking that wouldn't you have a little bit of fear of death? What if I really fear death? Is that a sign of lack of faith when you say, no, I also want to go to Vaikuntha right now?
Not necessarily. It's good to go to Vaikuntha. Yeah. But they are not, at least there's nothing said that they asked or anything like that. So it would appear that they, being great sages, that they were realized enough. Somehow they understood that the airplane was waiting for him. I don't know if the people on the airplanes announced that or something, but, it's Prabhupada puts it that way in the purport. But otherwise, it would appear they just felt, okay, that's for him, but we've got our program. And Haribol?
So, I was thinking, if it was me,
Mike?
I was thinking if it was me, I don't want to, if the Vaikuntha or the Vaikuntha do this here, I fear that so much that I would rather go now. I understand, I'm thinking that these munis are so great that they fall in the category of whether I'm living in hell or whether I'm living in this, as a worm, as long as I'm engaged in the devotional service, it's okay, it doesn't matter the circumstance. But I'm thinking, maybe on my persona, it's the fear of death that would want me to go to Vaikuntha immediately.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the point. If your desire to go to Vaikuntha is that, it's just too difficult in Haman's kraal. Gosh, what a battle. Let me get out of here. I can go to Vaikuntha. Or something along those lines. Then it's not so healthy. I mean, it's not so healthy. But if it's like whatever the Lord wants for me, I mean, that's an ideal type of mood. But, in Burijan Prabhu's book, I don't know if you've read it, about Prabhupada, he says how in Japan, he was there and Prabhupada was there, Prabhupada gave class, and he talked in the class about how advanced devotees, they don't mind, they're willing to stay in the material world as long as they can do service if that's the Lord's desire, that sort of idea. So Burijan Prabhu approached Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I'd like to stay here and spread your movement, words to that effect. And Prabhupada said to him, don't force your spiritual master to take birth again to save you. Yeah.
This is my glorious spiritual master.
Huh?
This is my glorious spiritual master.
I think so, yeah. Anyway, it's his biography, his experiences with Prabhupada. So yeah, if your desire, if a person's desire to go back to Godhead is basically on the basis of it's just such a hassle and too much pain and difficulty, it's certainly not the best attitude. Any reason than it is to desire to stay in the material world because you want to enjoy the material world. That's just another thing altogether. Is that okay? Yes, Prabhu. Very well.
I wanted to ask, in this Kali age, can one still be a pure spiritual seeking person even if they're not Krishna conscious?
If he what?
Even if they're not Krishna conscious.
Oh. Can they be? Well, you could say in principle it may be possible, but in practical terms, the likelihood of it is not great because the other processes of developing a relationship with God, God consciousness, they have some very serious shortcomings, which, like, I'll give you an example, like eating meat. It's a serious shortcoming. And if someone's a meat eater and they think it's fine and it's just okay and it's just normal, and they haven't got the spiritual consciousness to understand that it's not nice, that it's actually ghastly, it means they haven't really developed much spiritual consciousness. Do you follow the idea? And extremely offensive, I mean, in different ways, including to the Lord himself. Taking some of his children and eating them. Isn't it? Yeah. So, in principle, well, Prabhupada would say, on a number of occasions he would say, when he's dealing with people from other religions, just become, a good Christian or a good this or a good that. Yes, we're not trying to convert you into something else. But the thing is, to really become such a good, pure devotee of the Lord by following another process as those processes exist today, it's not going to be, you could say it's difficult enough in Krishna consciousness, which has everything there that you need. But when you've got these processes which have so many shortcomings, then the practical likelihood of them going back to Godhead, great. Yes, they could be born in the next lifetime as devotees, like of Krishna, provided they were not offensive. This is one of the problems. People in other traditions, sometimes or often or however often, but it definitely happens quite a bit. They're offensive towards Krishna consciousness, or they're offensive towards any other process other than the one they're in. Got to be killed. Got to be killed. So they burned down they were Christians, burned down a number of churches, and they were looking for the people to kill them. It's nice to be enthusiastic, but when enthusiasm gets sort of diverted by materialistic conceptions, then it's not nice. Then it becomes a danger, particularly when you become offensive. Is that okay?
But what if you need like your Rastafari, they still qualify? Would that be okay?
Rastafarians? Or what?
You don't need Rastafari.
Oh, I see. Rastafarians are generally very nice towards Krishna consciousness. Very, very nice, in my experience. And some of them become devotees. But the idea that Haile Selassie is God I would say it's not an accurate idea. And even Haile Selassie didn't accept that. You know that. When he came to Jamaica, he wouldn't get out of the plane because they're making such a big fuss that he's God. But I really don't think he was. So there you've got people who are nice. They're generally, at least in my experience, they're not offensive to Krishna consciousness. Actually, they're favorable. They like it. But they're into something and dedicated to something which has some shortcomings. Yeah, and so ultimately they're going to kind of miss the boat. But people like that, they would definitely be candidates either for just becoming devotees now, which has happened to some who I've known, or at least in their next life becoming devotees. But these people are very offensive and aggressive against not just Hare Krishna, but just any other religious tradition. You know, there's so much offense, and Krishna doesn't like it when his devotees are offended. He really doesn't like it at all. So, yeah, they're really moving in the wrong direction. Like they may, because they're into God and some things to do with God, so they're not as far away from God as some people who are just complete materialists. But the thing is that they're moving away from God. In maybe even in the name of God and being godly, they're actually moving away from God with the idea that I'm coming closer to God by killing people if they won't accept, our way. Hare Krishna. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.